Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. If you like my haircut, I'll cut yours.
Marty Levinson, my friend, it's Scott Lee Cohn, and I want you to know, while I'm cutting the waste and corruption in Illinois, I'm going to be doing it with you in mind.
Come on, baby, don't you want to go? Come on.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and our man of all men who's been doing this for over 22 years, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. Our links to YouTube, you'll find over 315,000 shows there. Community policing, we're all big on that, although I might not actually attend my November meeting this year. Not to sound overly optimistic, but that would be Game 6 of the World Series. And if the Cubs are in the World Series, hey, Commander, Sergeant, I don't care. That doesn't happen too many centuries. Of course, maybe the Cubs will be nice and wrap it up. Oh, I'm not. Okay, I'll just deal with it. Of course, the Cubs could wrap it up in 5, so that may not be a problem. But in any event, we want to congratulate Can TV on their new studios. We look forward to seeing them in the new facility and many years of happy use. And we hope that we get some quality shows over there too. Some additional ones, which would be, it's always good to have the better TV you can have. And by the way, I don't push enough for. You can do your own shows, guys. I know you can do it on the internet too, but these things, you'd be surprised how much these things get watched, even though we got all these watches on YouTube. I still get a hell of a lot more watches from people watching on TV, and it makes it that more substantial. Even if I'm on the bus going to Romanian, by the way. The last time I was on a bus going to Romanian, the guy says to me, "You're on TV. I learned a lot from you." So that was nice of him. That was very nice of him. In any event, and by the way, they close at 5, Alvin, just so you know. But you can always go another day. They're open every day, except Saturday. Anyway, it's a pleasure to introduce you to our election lawyer extraordinaire. We haven't filmed for almost 2 months at this point, because the studio was closed for a month. James P. Nally. Jim, how you doing?
It's great to be here, and thank you as always for the invitation. I love coming on the show.
First of all, thank you, and it's my pleasure, and thank you very much for that little extra that you filled our pockets with. Sorry, gang, allergies. I'm going to let you do most of the talking today.
You know what? I'm more than happy. We got a lot of things we can talk about. So
well, you know what? Let's talk minor stuff first, and then let's get to the election, because no one's really given anybody an overall rundown about what we're looking like election-wise yet, so stick around for that. But first, a favorite team of ours, and I still, by the way, every single game, I'm not that I'm superstitious, but this time I guess maybe I am a little. I'm wearing a hat given to me by this gentleman that basically says, Cubs world champs 1908, and every time I wear that hat, they seem to win this year. Of course, they seem to win a lot this year, so it may not be.
I think it's a good sign. The day we are filming is the 107th anniversary of them winning their last World Series. So I think all the karma's positive this year, Avi.
No, I think so too, and I really this is such a great young team, and I would have been thrilled if they had just won 80 this year.
You know what? I love this young team. I don't think these guys are caught up in any of the black cat or the goat or any of the historical stuff that people have taken on as baggage when they play for the Cubs. And then, when the Cubs blow up, as they always have, it's we have this tradition, we have this curse. These guys are just young, and they're not affected by any of that, and they're just not even aware of it, and they're just playing really, really good baseball.
They shouldn't be. The truth is, I used to make the case at one point in time that the press bringing all this stuff up to the players was doing a job in psyching them out.
I think these guys are. There's so many young players here. So many guys who were, Kyle Schwarber was 8 years old when the Bartman ball thing happened in 2003. Most of these guys.
And by the way, I'll argue that I don't think Lou ever was getting to that ball.
Oh no. And you know what? Forget about that ball. If Gonzalez hadn't muffed the ground ball,
Yeah,
a couple minutes
they were
later,
still 8 runs in front.
Yeah, you had
after
Pryor
that.
on the mound. Gonzalez, who was a vacuum cleaner that whole year at shortstop, muffs that ball, and the inning goes on, and disaster strikes.
And then you have
can't.
Kerry Wood the next day, who was on fire that
Right.
whole year himself.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I think this whole curse thing, and whether it's Bartman or whether it's a goat or whatever, is just a convenient excuse for people to fall back on when things don't go well.
By the way, I did see a really funny article on, Facebook referred to it. It's on The Onion.
Okay.
That talked about, they made up an imaginary player, and he was complaining that Chris Bryant has just got to stop slaughtering goats before every game.
You know what? I remember 5 years ago, you and I sat here very optimistic about the Cubs. We made the mistake of talking about them very early on in the season, and they proceeded just to tank. And
True.
I remember the next time we filmed, you and I off camera said, we are not talking about the Cubs anymore. And we have not for 5 years. But you know what? We're back to talking about them because I think they're worth talking about right now.
No, I agree. And listen, when you got a guy like Javi Baez batting 800
Oh, yeah.
in the playoffs, and in whatchamacallit, they held Soler hitless yesterday, so his average is down to 500.
Yeah, and Schwarber launching these moonshots onto the top of the
Yeah, you heard they're going to encase that ball that he hit on top of the scoreboard. They're going to encase it in plastic and leave it there. They actually went out and checked the watermark on the baseball, and it is that ball.
Sure.
So
you know what? I would leave it up there too. It's a positive sign. Leave it up there. It's a good luck charm. You know what? Take it down after we win the World Series and put it in a museum somewhere.
Yeah, no, fine by me. Or they can leave it there. Well, I think at some point they want to clean it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I will just say this. I'm very optimistic. I really do think that this is looking like a year we could win it. There's always a lot of variables in baseball. The teams that are supposed to win it sometimes don't. The teams that are coming in really hot sometimes go cold. But right now, it just seems like these guys are just playing baseball, and they're not affected by all the hoopla and everything else. And right up till now, they play great baseball. I give Joe Madden a lot of credit. I think he's the perfect manager for this team.
I don't think I've ever seen a more perfect manager for any team ever. This guy is unbelievable. You lost weight, didn't you?
The camera makes me look thinner.
Yeah, but except I'm not seeing it through a camera.
Yeah, well, you know what? I am just so excited about the prospects that we have now. As we're filming here, it will either be the Mets or the Dodgers. And you know what? I really want to get all these old skeletons out of our closet once and for all. We beat the Cardinals, which was always the team that beat us in order to win.
See, that's the big thing. Because no matter how many injuries, no matter what happened, Ernie Broglio, Lou Brock, whoever else.
The Cardinals were always the guys to stick the pin in the balloon at the right time. And this time, we took care of them. So I would personally like to see the Mets be our opponent for the National League pennant. Because those of us of a certain age remember 1969. And anybody who lived through that, the team after the Cardinals that you least like are the Mets.
That might be who's coming next. Well, either the Mets or the Dodgers will know by the time.
But that's why I would like the Mets, because I want to get this out of our system once and for all. We took care of the Cardinals. We've proven that we're a better team than they are now, and we're going to do the same thing with the Mets and erase that whole 1969 debacle, and we're going to start fresh. And at that point then, after our first World Series, there'll be many more.
That would be nice. One thing I'm doing, and after this we'll get started with election stuff, and just general ground rules and things. I've been asking a lot of people today about the school situation. And, for those of you, as of today anyway, and I don't think this is changing anytime soon, when Barbara Byrd Bennett is being sentenced next year, she will get to meet a lot of her CPS students over a 7.5-year period, no matter what jail she's going to.
Yeah,
so
it's very interesting that she took a plea knowing that long of a sentence was what the government was going to require in order to agree to a plea deal, because as you may know, in the federal system, it's different than the state system in terms of getting good time credits and serving out your entire sentence. generally speaking, in the federal system, you're going to serve 85% of whatever your actual sentence is. So if you look at that, with 7.5 years, she's going to be in the federal prison system for over 5 years at a minimum.
Oh, that's a substantial amount
And
of
I
time.
believe she's kind of in her mid-60s, so by the time she gets out, she'll be over 70 years of age.
Wow. Yeah, you have to wonder about whom she might be protecting or whatever else, getting this out of the way.
Well, obviously, to take a plea of knowing that's the sentence that the government is requiring in order to agree to the plea deal, that's a long sentence.
Very long sentence, no question about it. And I was surprised, actually, because I'm not used to seeing anything just or fair going on.
Yeah, well, this happened very rapidly, as you know, too. I mean, between the time the indictment came down and her plea, it was, less than 2 weeks.
So, okay, here's a question I have. Seeing this thing like the Barbara Bennett thing, I don't even, Rahm Emanuel, before him Richie Daley, whoever else, I've never really thought very highly of the public schools for a long time. And, I've always found that, generally speaking, people who've gone to private schools, be they Catholic, Jewish, secular, whatever, usually have an edge. I've never been against the whole charter school thing. Part of it is it just has to be run right. If you have a well-run charter school system, like for instance, on the last show, we had Alvin Bouteillon, who's a real good guy, who's a fan of the Betty Chavez charter schools. I'll bet they do a bang-up job, down there for their kids.
Well, I think part of it is, the problem I see is there are a lot of really good, dedicated teachers in the Chicago public school system.
True.
But it seems to me that a lot of the problem is not out in the schools where the teachers are educating kids. It's downtown at the administrative level.
Right, but first of all, how much do these administrators hinder the teachers?
Well, you've identified it, and I think I'm not a complete agreement with the charter model, but what I do
By the way,
see,
nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of school vouchers too.
but one of the
if it's done right.
One of the things with the charter model that you do see is that the administration is much leaner and is much closer to the actual instructional component. It's not a system where, the administration is downtown taking up 9 floors of an office building. And that part, I think, is something that the Chicago Public Schools needs to look at and say, shouldn't we have more resources out where the kids are, out where
Yep.
the teachers are?
And you know what? Everything needs to be localized. First, you've got the federal government taking their piece of the pie, not knowing what they're doing beyond belief. Telling the state system that tells the local. I mean, there's so many administrators in there. What more than a good teacher and in a student willing to learn do you really need? I mean, that's really the key to this stuff. There was good education for years. In the days when, I know people that were in class with 48 other kids who are getting a better education than the kids in public school right now.
Yeah, again, it gets back to the fact that I think you got to let teachers teach.
Yep.
And I think some of this stuff about, teaching to the test with these Common Core requirements, it becomes almost rote, and what you're doing is, the teachers feel compelled to go over things that are going to appear on the test, and kids feel compelled to memorize that so they can spit it back out onto a test when they take it, and the more creative learning is being stifled.
And I really think the idea is you really want to teach a kid, number one, how to learn, among other things for the future, and get into a subject and really, really get the whole class into it and really embellish it and get them to study. Even if they don't remember all the specifics from their specific class, it surprises me sometimes how much does come back to me.
You know what?
Times.
I went to a very good parochial Catholic school for high school, and they taught you how to think and how to learn there. And I will tell you, after that, when I went to college and I went to law school, it was a relative breeze. If I had to pick out the segment of my education that was the hardest, it was high school. But after I got through that and learned how to learn, everything after that was made easy.
I agree. We just had our reunion last November for my class. I don't want to say which number because I'll give, a long time ago, guys. In any event, it's everybody made that same statement. When I got out of here, college was so easy. I mean, one story I'll tell you. I was taking a class in marketing, And I had a really good teacher. He was with Leo Burnett, and he was one of their top people. That's one of the top I think it's still around under a different name. Top advertising agencies. I thought I was coming. I had skipped a couple of classes. I thought I was coming to class before the midterm. It turned out I came on the day of the midterm. I hadn't studied. I hadn't done any prep. So I figure, okay, I'm here. I'll take the test. You know, like, what can I do? Worst comes to worst, I drop the course. You know, I'm out the money. So I took the test. We came back the next week. When I took the test, I figured, well, if I'm lucky, I got a D minus, which in high school was like 70 to 72 or something.
Just enough to get by, right?
Yeah, maybe. I felt like whatever I did was like upper 60s, low 70s, not anymore. So either high F or low D. The teacher graded on the curve. It turned out, and most of the other kids were public school kids, I got the highest grade in the class. And it was like, oh! And I really wanted to say, holy, you know what. But, you know, it was like, wow. Boy,
well,
that, you know.
You're right. But, you know, again, I think it gets back to you have to have motivated kids, and the kids, I think, in large part are motivated by a teacher who feels like they can really, you know, they can really have an impact on the kids in their classroom, and that they're not being restrained by outside forces saying, you've got to teach this because we're going to give them a test on it later and all that kind of stuff. Just let these teachers do what they do best.
You know, I had the opportunity to become a city college teacher, which I turned down, and I basically, the school, Mayfair College, which was really like, even though it was just a junior college, I was very close with the English faculty, and of course my degree, communications, journalism, that sort of thing. They told me what I'd be looking forward to, or not looking forward to.
Right.
And they were telling me if they weren't like in their late 50s, early 60s, they get started again in another place, in another system, doing something else maybe. You know, they all warned me, it's like, you're not going to like, you know, you have all these idealistic ideas, you're not going to like what you see. You know, it's like, why can't these things be reality? You have enough kids who really want to learn a certain way. You have enough teachers that want to learn, but you have administrators. Now, in the case of the city college, I know there was no politics involved. I mean, just because the head of the city colleges was Jake Arby's son-in-law, who was former head of the Democratic National Committee, you know, why should there be any politics involved in those things?
Well, speaking of politics, I'd like to segue into that because we're going to have a very busy season. There are a number of offices up, just to kind of run through the highlights.
Well, when is the election first?
The primary election will be March 15th of 2016. So most of you who are watching right now probably been approached by people asking you to sign a petition for whatever office, judge or state legislator or whatever that they're running for. And the petitions then are filed the last week in November, and then the objections and all the ballot certification stuff goes on for about a month, and early voting itself will be starting in February. So this is going to come, you know, pretty fast once the new year hits.
Now, early voting this year is going to be 3 weeks or 4 weeks ahead, or?
Yes, I don't know the exact date yet, but it will be. And of course, we have what I've talked about on other shows, Avi. We now have the, you know, no fault absentee voting, which means all you got to do is say, send me an absentee ballot, and you don't have to say that you're ill or you're going to be out of town or anything. It will be sent to your home. What easier way to vote a ballot than sitting at your kitchen table with a cup of coffee and looking over the candidates and making a choice, and then put it in the postage-paid envelope that the City Board of Elections sends you, and send that off.
So there's absolutely no excuse not to vote. Now, frankly, I just, even though it's so easy to do, and there's other things I could, you know, I've been actually very tempted to be a judge. It'd be fun to be a judge election day, and it's decent money these days, too. It's a long day.
It is a long day, though. Those judges put in a long day.
I have done it.
Yeah.
And I did it in the days of judicial paper ballots, by the way.
Oh, so you were probably there till midnight counting ballots.
No, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. We were there about 23 hours seriously,
Yeah.
23 hours.
Nowadays, absent some major
well, also
equipment
more
failure.
people voted in those days. This was actually in the early 80s. I think it was 1980. I think it was 1984. The precinct I was at, of 531 voters, 523 voted.
Well, what you're seeing now is you're seeing every election, the early voting and the no-fault absentee voting numbers are going up and up and up. And I believe the last election cycle, it was over a quarter of the vote was cast either early or by absentee. And I certainly think, you know, this election it could be a third of the vote or more.
Yeah, no, well, this is a presidential election, so...
Yeah, more people will be voting, but I think more people will also be availing themselves of the convenience of an early voter, an absentee ballot.
Now, after actually having completely downed out my Cubs high by watching the entire Democratic debate live, and for those of you who are Monty Python fans, to put this in perspective, after watching the Democratic debate live in its entirety, my brain hurts.
Well, besides president, though, and I want to make sure everybody understands what other offices will be
Yeah, but I just
contested.
want to point out that people may be leaving the country as a result of these Democratic and Republican debates.
I don't know, or they'll be running because most of these debates have like 100 people in them each. So,
I wish the Democratic Party had a few more people in that debate.
Yeah, the
and
Republican
a little younger
debate,
ones
yeah.
too.
but
Republicans, yeah, we gotta call the herd already.
I think that will, you know, that will always happen. That will happen because people eventually will get it down to, you know, the top 2 or 3 candidates, and those will be the ones really contesting it by the time we're actually voting.
Yeah, the trouble is that some of those who are going to get culled are some of the better ones.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not necessarily survival of the fittest. It's survival of whoever has money or whoever has, you know, a good media presence or a good media advisor or some of the other factors that go into that.
No question. So let's get off the president now and let me get you into the rest of the shtick.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about, just so people understand
Sure.
the other offices. Illinois, this cycle will have a U.S. Senator race. That office will
That'll
be up for election.
Kirk.
Yeah, the incumbent is Mark Kirk, and there's 2 or 3 Democrats running
Right.
In that primary. Also, due to the death of Judy Bart Topinka, there'll be a 2-year unexpired term for the Illinois State Comptroller to be elected. So there's an incumbent, Leslie Munger, who was appointed by the governor, and I know she's running as a Republican. I'm not sure if anybody else is running in the Republican primary, and I know...
There's been noises, but nobody's stepped forward.
Yeah, I know as we sit here today, 2 candidates in the Democratic Party, and perhaps more have announced they're running. Daniel Biss, who's a state senator right now,
Right.
and Susanna Mendoza, who is the Chicago City clerk. And there may be some other people running, I don't know.
Oh, I'm glad I got to be very, you know what, it's something I have to be very careful about on Facebook, who I like and who I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much that, but I forgot about Miss Mendoza. And
Yeah.
I have to be, now I'm seeing who's lining up with who.
And then every state legislator is up because they are always up every 2 years. They're 2-year terms. And then roughly a third of the Illinois State Senate, because they have staggered terms, will be elected for this election cycle. And then in Cook County, we'll have a number of contested judicial races as well. Right now, as we speak, there are 8 countywide vacancies. There are 2 appellate court vacancies. And there could be some more of those before the filing deadline. Right now, that's what's out there. And then a number of the sub-circuits have openings. So there will be a number of judicial races that people will find on their ballot.
And I'm already getting requests from judicial candidates to come on.
And you know, and I want to stop here for a minute because you and Jack Lahane, who writes a blog called For What It's Worth,
Great guy, Jack Lahane.
you are the 2 people who do the most to educate people about judicial candidates than anybody else in Cook County.
Thank you.
It's really, you know, I've said this before, the public official that most people are likely to encounter in their life is a judge. You know, think about it. You get a traffic ticket, you may end up in front of a judge on the traffic ticket. You know, you're a victim of a crime. You may be in court in a criminal matter involving that crime. You get into a dispute with your neighbor over a contract, or somebody hits you and injures you with an automobile and you have a personal injury claim. You'll be in a civil courtroom with a judge.
Or jury duty.
Or jury duty. You know, as a citizen, everybody gets that.
Yeah, I had that
call.
earlier this year. I had a really good, I was almost sorry, I was not sorry I didn't get picked. This was a civil case that was going to last forever.
But my point is this, of all the public offices, the one that most people are going to come face to face with is a judge.
Yeah.
And that is the one that gets the least amount of press coverage, the least amount of information. And as I said, you do a great service because
Thank you.
I know during the election season, You probably have more judicial candidates than anybody else appearing. And,
we'll do 50 to 60 interviews every season.
and people, and the beauty is now with your presence on YouTube, even if people don't catch that on the cable, they're able to look that up, and you have a list of who's appearing on each show, so people really have a chance to see that candidate on television and hear them talk about their backgrounds and their judicial philosophies, and there's nowhere else you can get that.
And sometimes just get popular years later, like for instance when, that scandal with our former state controller. The alleged paramour that he liked actually came on the show when he ran for judge, and that was got a ton of hits.
And as I said, if people want to go on the internet, there's a blog called For What It's Worth. It's done by a lawyer named Jack Lahane, and he advertises the websites of various judicial candidates. He talks about their activities, different events that they're attending or hosting, their committees are hosting for them. So that's a very, very, very important aspect of what you do, is educating people about the judicial races. And other than you and that blog, there's very little coverage, and I really fault the mainstream press for not doing more about that. They're the first ones to complain about some judicial decision or why did the court decide this, and they spend the least amount of time educating people about candidates running for judge.
And I wish they would do more along those lines. I really do, because there is such a need, and these are so important. And it bothers me. I will actually always register to vote Democrat, even if I really don't want to, because that's where all the judicial races are, among other things.
Yeah, well, in Cook County, to be pretty accurate, the Democratic primary usually decides who is going to be elected judge, because the last several election cycles...
just because the ballot says, Democrat XYZ, and then it says Republican 50,000 votes.
Well, most of the time it doesn't say anything next to Republican, because the Republican Party...
They don't even run.
Nobody runs. So you're correct. And that's why I think the Democratic primary, the judicial primaries are often... Those are the ones where you'll sometimes see 6, 7, 8 people running for a particular judicial opening, because everybody kind of understands that contest will decide who actually becomes judge.
No, it's true. It's 100% true. I think there was one Republican that won last time, and it was the one race I cared about more than any other.
Yeah, there's a couple of sub-circuits, are in play in terms of between Democrats and Republicans. But generally speaking, the county-wide offices in Cook County, if you prevail in the Democratic primary, you won't even have a Republican opponent in November.
Yeah, when's the last time a Republican won anything countywide? About 25 years ago?
I'm trying to remember, but it's been a long time. It's
been over 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken.
I would say so. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, no, it's...
But you do a very good job on the judicial stuff, and I want to compliment you on that. And when people ask me, because as an attorney, people often come up to you and say, I don't know anything about judges, what can you tell me? I direct them to your site, and I say, look on here. Many of the people running are going to appear on this program, and you'll be able to find them and actually watch them for 10 or 15 minutes talking about who they are and what they want to do. And the Lahane blog also has a lot of information, so that's where I tend to direct people.
Right, and by the way, this is the first time I'm mentioning it so far. This year, Jewish Chicago will also be out before early voting or at the time of early voting, depending on early voting start. And we'll have a complete and full rundown of each and every single judicial race in our pertinent areas. I mean,
and that's another great resource, Avi, because you do take the time to address almost all the races, even down to the sub-circuit races.
Yeah, I do try. We're actually a minute further than this on the clock, so
Okay.
It really is time to wrap up. Excuse me, I want to thank you very much, election lawyer extraordinaire Jim Nally. Thank you for gracing us. Go Cubs. Thank you very much, Sonny. Join us again next week.
And I want to see you have Joe Madden here after they win the World Series. I want him to be on the show.
Hey, he's more than welcome. I'll even play his favorite, Led Zeppelin stuff, whatever he likes.
Whatever he wants.
Oh, Rolling Stones. He's a Stones man. We'll play. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.